This is Clam Radio. This is John Tabacco, and I'm talking to Bob Ball. And we're going to discuss Yellowstone. Yellowstone being what exactly?
Well, it's not Yogi Bear's Yellowstone, that's for sure.
No.
It's an interesting phenomenon, you know. I mean, there's two ways to look at this. One way is it can plunge the Earth into a nuclear winter and annihilate 60% of the agriculture of the planet and kill about 8 million people initially, and essentially gut the United States of America. So that's one way of looking at it, and that happens basically every 640,000 years. It has a small burp every 70,000 years. It had a small burp, which was about 4 times the size of Mountain St. Helens, 70,000 years ago. But the typical eruption of this super caldera volcano is, to put it into specific terms, 10,000 Mount St. Helens. That means that it's going to generate, on its initial eruption, basically a cube of material, 10 miles high by 10 miles wide by 10 miles thick. Now, if you don't know what 10 miles is, basically that's the height of an airliner flying. So picture an airliner flying 37,000 feet, and then multiply that in the 3 dimensions. That
pretty big.
That would be in the first 2 minutes. So basically anything within 150 miles of that place will be annihilated, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at anywhere between 850 to 3 million deaths within a half an hour.
And that's because of just the
That's
ash?
just because of
heat?
the hot plasmic gas. Yeah. Now, as it progresses, because what people don't understand is a Texas-size magma field, magma chamber, essentially, the size of Texas. That means 370,000 square miles of magma over 5,000 degrees sits underneath Yellowstone, just waiting to go up. So you're talking within 300 miles, 400 miles, ash deposits of 50 to 60 feet. And even out here in New York, we're talking about ash deposits of 6 inches.
And how long would that take to reach, the coasts of, the coast here would be further away, months. But it would block out the sky. I mean, basically,
it would turn the whole planet into a nuclear winter, essentially. And that winter would probably last at least 5 years. You wouldn't be able to even see the sun for, I would say 18 months to 2 years.
Well, that's assuming that it just blows up. What if it just keeps spewing out stuff? I mean, it's a huge thing. How long could it spew when it explodes?
They have detected ancient argon, ancient helium, ancient sulfur dioxide, things that they know what's going to happen. So basically, and they've had ash deposits from the previous eruptions that they have detected. As far south as Louisiana and New Orleans, and as far north as Maine. So
it's happened before, then, you're saying? And
it's happened at least 10 times before that they have been able to geologically. It's probably happened constantly, but with erosion and water and different things, they can only go so far back. Now, that's not even talking about what the sulfur is going to do to the atmosphere and the acid rain and everything else. So not only are you blocking out the sun, which is the primary source of energy for the planet, but then you're causing problems with the chemistry of the planet. So, for example, the acid rain would cause horror shows in places like Pennsylvania, and places like, and really, what people don't understand is 60% of the world eats from the heartlands of America. I mean, that's really the truth.
We grow a lot of food here, yeah.
So this not only would affect, and blocking out the sun would be worldwide. Once you get up to those types of levels as far as atmospheric disturbance, and then we're not even talking about the EMP effects. So, for example, with that much ash and that much particles rubbing against each other, you'd have tremendous lightning, effects. Don't even know what that's going to happen, what that's going to do. So, and it did just yesterday. It made a big quake,
so these have been ramping up recently. That's why people are concerned.
It's been ramping up in the last 10 years. So they really don't know what the hell's going on. But the animals are leaving the park, and the animals seem to know. Like,
they know earthquakes and stuff.
Let's just get out of here. Let's take off. So they seem to know that something's up, and it's all connected. I mean, there's been a tremendous influx of energy put into the planet from cosmic rays, from the magnetic field of the Earth flipping, which is flipping faster than they ever thought. They're now looking at like 80 years, if not less. The sun is going to sleep.
What happens when that happens, when it totally flips?
Well, for a moment, we don't have any protection, so we're going to lose a certain amount of our atmosphere, and already things have happened. For example, the plasma came into contact with the Earth the other day with the solar storm. It hit K12 levels. Little solar storms that would be nothing to us are now being major storms. Especially if, like, we're magnetically coupled to the sun. The magnetic field of the sun sometimes and the Earth align, and that's bad. Because what happens is that particles then come racing into the Earth. Like I said before, we had a show on this. Areas of the Earth have already flipped, which is off of South America. They call it the South America anomaly. They have to actually specifically do special things to satellites if they have to go over this area, because they'll be wrecked essentially. And that's happening now. So because of the sun going to sleep, the solar wind is not as strong as it was. And what happens is that when the solar wind gets below 300 kilometers per second, what happens is the cosmic rays from outside of our solar system come in, and they interact with fissionable materials. They make essentially the reactions of fission more. Okay, it effectively changes the state of criticality. So the core of our planet, which has got uranium and thorium and things like that, they ramp up. So there's more energy going on, and there's more volcanism going on in the seafloor and South America, and also in the Pacific Rim of those plates, Antarctica, and Hawaii. Okay, that's in the middle. So more energy, and it has to go someplace, and that translates into either earthquakes or volcanism of some type. The Earth's rotation is actually slowing down. So by it slowing down, the Earth becomes more rounder. The centrifugal acceleration at the equator is not as great as it was, so the planet has to become rounder.
So that's pressure on the
and
everything.
Well, it can become rounder because all these continental shelves are essentially floating on liquid mantle. So there's plates that go under a plate that's called subluxation. That's what you have going on in California, and that that seafloor, that ancient seafloor, is being melted, and as it melts, the lighter materials become buoyant and go up to the surface. They turn into gases, calcium carbonate, all kinds of things. Now, Michio Kaku, again, brilliant man, said, why do we have to wait for this to happen?
Why?
Exactly. And I agree with him 100%. Because we don't. We can turn Yellowstone, not harming the park, but we can turn it into the next Hoover Dam project for the 21st century. Which means on a geothermic basis, okay, because of the Texas-sized magma field underneath it, we could tap in to that.
How so?
We have horizontal drilling equipment, so they could set up camp 20 miles from the park, and they can drill on a slight angle into the pool that's underneath the park.
Now, that sounds like a big undertaking.
It is, but again, what's the downside? Downside is it's going to blow up, okay?
Yeah.
No offense or buts, done before.
Well, wouldn't that increase the chances of it blowing up by drilling things into it?
Not if it's done the right way, which means if you have 12 sites coming in from all angles, approximately 2.5 to 3 inches hole. That's
all?
That's it, because of the pressure. Relieving that pressure, but also tapping into that heat, and as straws, you could think of it as straws, siphoning that material out. Now, that material is very hot, but it's also very rich in minerals that can be used for industry and other things. So you also have tremendous amount of heat, and the heat being basically, by the time they get it, it's going to be, I don't know, 4,000 degrees, something like that. Definitely hot enough to run CO2 cycle turbines, which means they use carbon dioxide pressurized from a liquid to a gaseous state, which is tremendous amounts of energy. It's very efficient. Those types of systems, they're seeing anywhere between 48 and 49% efficiencies, which is about as high as you can get with a thermodynamic process because of Carnot. You can only extract so much heat and so much mechanical energy out of a thermodynamic process.
And aren't you going to be releasing toxic gases as well? I mean,
no. If you do it this way with the straws, you can contain the whole thing, and all those gases and pressures and solids can be managed, which means, again, it's a small straw. So, and again, we do have the technology to do this. And unlike Fukushima, which is so radioactive, it's ridiculous. They're anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 sieverts. And at 75, you turn into the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you saw those people melting.
Yeah.
That's what, so this would not be that. There'd be some radiation because you have radiation in granite and everything else, but not like that. And again, it would be clean energy, and the amount of energy would be almost enough to power 1/3 of the continent, which would be, like I said, the next Hoover Dam. And it would be, it's been a hot spot for well over 65 million years, so I see no end and sight of the reservoir of the upwelling of the magma. And by reducing the pressure, the magma fields are somewhat connected. You might be able to reduce risks of other volcanoes and earthquakes in other areas.
So you're saying all the volcanoes are kind of connected?
Well, at least they are in the northern hemisphere. There's scientists have learned a lot in the last 15 years, compared to the last 100 years of volcanism, and realizing that a lot of things are connected. Yeah. So if you tap into that pressure and control it, and siphon that heat and that pressure, you could keep your Yellowstone the way it is.
Yeah.
kind of like the way they keep Niagara Falls the way it is. They really don't know how much energy they'd be able to. Could be more, But like I said, they don't. The reality is that the not doing anything, you're just going to be a victim to disaster. Essentially, millions of people are going to die from either right away or from famine. Because there's, losing that much food production.
Sure.
Worldwide. Remember, the winter's going to affect the populations worldwide.
Yeah.
So
is there any steps to do any of this stuff? I mean, what you're talking about seems likely that it could happen very soon. How do we get this going? What do we have to, raise a Kickstarter program?
Well, there's no question that the best minds have to work on this.
It's not a guessing game. We can see this happening.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
The best minds have to work on this, and it has to go out to the media, and it has to be something that I think personally that they would need to consult with Russia and China, some of the big industrial powers, because this would be a huge undertaking as far as. And some of the technology doesn't exist. It's on a drawing board, but there's some unknowns, like anything else, like going to the moon. I mean, essentially, like I said, this would be your moon shot, your Hoover Dam, Myself, personally, I wouldn't wait for disaster to happen.
Well, you can't do anything once it happens. Once the disaster happens...
I would be proactive in it. But exactly. You can't do anything after... I mean, there's no way to put that back in once that blows up. And it's going to affect the entire planet.
Yeah, not just us. The entire planet is going to be affected.
So, there's been other people have been saying, at least on the Q-chans and whatnot, that the so-called deep state is planning on detonating a small nuke there or whatever and setting this thing off. And
why would they want to do that?
Well, they want to kill the Georgia Guidestones.
Well, why would they want to do that, though? Why would they want to...
The Georgia Guidestones say that they want to take the population down to 500 million from 7.2 billion. And
yeah, but I understand that. That's true. I could see how somebody could think that, but you're also affecting the environment, the other animals. I mean,
they don't care.
Well, how are they going to survive? They have a big thing in Pennsylvania.
I'm not saying that they're going to do this. I'm saying that there's both left extremes and right extremes.
Right. I've heard this before. Sure,
but those Guidestones are factual. They do exist.
Yeah, and it says that it wants to take the population down to like 500 million or something.
500 million.
I mean, why didn't you just wipe out people with the virus? And that's easier to do. And
that's also talked about too.
I mean, Yellowstone affects the entire planet. I mean, it doesn't make anybody's life comfortable. That's all I can say. You'd have to live underground, basically.
And who's to say they don't want to?
Who's to say they don't already have that stuff? The elite, they can live underground. Who knows?
I don't understand half the things that people do, to be honest with you. I don't think...
Well, they're evil. It's clearly obvious.
Definitely the
greedy.
There's the 0.01% who own just about everything. They definitely are not working for the regular common folk and the regular man. And there's definitely a war on. I mean, in that respect. I mean, there's people like you and me and everybody else who care, and we want to see us go to the moon and Mars and stop these horrible things. And there's so much real estate out there. You just go outside and take a look at night. And, you realize that to get into a Type 1 civilization that would prevent our extinction I think, should be a priority for every world leader. And it's very important. It's very important for us to leave to our children a future that's viable. I know that my descendants, 100 generations from now, will be doing all kinds of wonderful things. And what's wrong with that? Than just, counting zeros in a bank account. There are so many things to explore, so many ancient technologies. I personally believe that at one time there was a 10th planet that existed between... I still count Pluto as a planet, folks. Sorry about that. But A 10, and when you think about it, 10 toes, 10
Right,
fingers.
It all makes sense.
I think, makes sense. But if you look, there's pyramids all over this planet. They're now seeing a pyramid on Antarctica, and there's pyramids. There's pyramids on every continent. Some people cover it up, but I've seen pyramids on the moon and pyramids on Mars.
Yeah, so.
And now they're finding it as an ancient power source. And to you, I even said to you, I said, there's no way that a guy in the Bronze Age, and I was being generous, could build this. Okay?
Right.
And all these pyramids are aligned so perfectly and everything else. Was there an actual war in the sense of the solar system that caused people, Mars to have a moon that split in half, and
sure, why not?
And this whole asteroid belt, and
that's a lot of time.
Essentially, the civilization here became Robinson and Crusoe, and
sure, why not?
And I mean, it's totally possible.
Yeah, absolutely. The asteroid belt, something went on there. It's not there for no reason.
Look at Uranus. I mean, Uranus is knocked on its head sideways. I mean, people don't realize that the whole planet is sideways. So something happened to it. Catastrophic. We don't know. Then you talk about the moon, and it's so perfect in size, and
that's
now we have an ice field both on the north and south poles. And it's kind of like, and I've said this, it's just like 2001.
Yeah,
it really is. It's like, okay, I'm God, and I've set some goals for you, like you're in kindergarten, and then you have another goal, and this is here. It's like you're training a puppy. There's little treats and goals, and I put a Lake Erie of ice there for you, and it's on the South Pole, and it's very stable, and it's a nice place to build rocket fuel and everything else, and live, and then to perfect your technologies for the other planets, and it's perfect to get to the next level of humankind. And when you colonize the moon and you colonize Mars, which you have to be a type 1 civilization to do that, you have to have and I keep talking about this, the holy grail of tech, folks. By the way, if we had the holy grail of tech, we wouldn't have this problem, because we'd have fusion reactors that would basically produce liquid helium like it was, nothing. And that could be used to quell volcanoes all over the world. But I digress. Then you have room temperature superconductors and photon computers. And that's what I don't understand about this latest solar probe, too, because they sent this thing's going to be 8 million miles away from the sun, and I'm like, but the first CME is going to wipe it out. I mean,
that could be an issue, yeah.
I mean, silicon-based circuits, especially modern ones, don't work very well. Believe it or not, the reason why the Voyage has been doing so good is because it's made with a Motorola 68000 processor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a 68000. It's the precursor to that, but basically it's only 4.5 megahertz. So, and it's got a little gold thing on it, and it's ceramic. The circuitry inside the Voyagers are very robust, let's put it that way. So they can take a lot. And it's shielded also. They have a lot of shielding on it. And it's nuclear powered. Nobody wants to talk about that, but there's plutonium 239.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's gonna have power probably for another 45 years. So it's been up there quite some time. So things, and that was done in the 70s. So, when there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
It just has to be.
But I think you're saying all these different steps that we could take all has to depend on the ability for humans to work together, not be greedy, put their ego aside, and try to do things for the future. Armstrong and those guys landing on the moon, word is, I don't know if it's true, they said that there was somebody watching them. That's what I was told. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. But if that's the case, the thing that would be, why would you want to have humans be on the moon when they're still killing each other here? We're a dangerous species. We got bombs and stuff.
No. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it at all. I've met people all my life, and there is a force of evil behind causing a lot of the wars, problems, things. It comes down, you probably heard this also, it comes down to 13 families. But these families have descendants that go back thousands of years. They call them the blue bloods.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are evil. They do very evil, selfish things. They do blood sacrifices, all kinds of stuff. There's 45,000 indictments for a reason. And a lot of the media is not talking about it. They're all part of it. They're all part of the Mockingbird. It's called MK Mockingbird. And, you know, these people, when the end of World War II happened, General Eisenhower, Bradley, MacArthur, Patton, they all came to Truman. They said, hey, you know, genie's out of the bottle. We gotta stop this and take over the whole world, and otherwise, you know, there'll be a problem in the Middle East. There'll be a problem in this. We can all work together. Blah blah blah. These are warriors. They don't want to see a war. They just went through a thing. You know, they want to play golf and put their feet up and whatnot.
Right.
But Eisenhower had a guy, skull and crossbones, Yale person next to them from OSI. Who knows what kind of skeletons that this failed haberdasher had in his pocket. But he didn't listen to him. So in as little as 4.5 years, and you have to think about it, you know, who the Rothschilds, who these people have, you know, set up with these banking systems and everything else. It's fiat currency. War is very profitable for them.
Sure, they set them up.
They don't care about the lives ruined, and all the presidents talked about the military-industrial complex and all kinds of things, and the money that was being spent. And I mean, we spent $102 trillion worldwide on war since the end of World War II. And interesting enough, that happens to be the supposedly net worth of the Rothschilds, is $100 trillion, they say. I don't believe in coincidences. So this thing, we could either work together or we can witness it. Witness it, the annihilation of, well, it's not an Ellie event, but it'll change the way we all live.
Yeah.
It really will, because you're talking about plunging that planet into a nuclear winter for at least 5 years. Untold amount of animals, livestock, crops. I mean,
everything.
And you know, you have to see that, you know, these elites, you know, only 6 companies control all the media. Only 3 companies control really all of what I call big agro. And the problem they're having with this red tide down in Florida, with millions of fish dying everywhere and whatnot, that's big agro. That's basically they're mining phosphates for fertilizer, and they're dumping fertilizer and basically into the ocean from sugar plantations and whatnot, and it's causing these huge algae blooms. And they don't care. They've bought politicians. There's no standard, and that's basically it. That's really the case throughout the country. You have politicians that make a career of being in politics, and it was never, well, from the founders on, it was more like selecting a jury. It was never designed to be a career.
Right.
It was designed to, you're serving your country.
Right. People go in and they actually make more money.
So I think that until you take the money out of politics, to which that there's a one-time donation to a politician up to $10,000 lifetime. Any company or person is treated the same way. Only $10,000 ever. Period. And everybody has term limits for at least 2 terms in every office. Whether it's 2 terms as a congressperson, or 2 terms as a senator, or 2 terms as any elected position. I think that's the only way you'll get money out of the circumstance, and then you'll have people in there that are thinking about the problems of their community, their constituents, as it were. Then they have a stake in the game. And if they have a stake in the game, then they're going to be involved, and there's going to be constructive discussions over realistic problems, such as the healthcare problems, such as the Yellowstone problems, such as the big quake that we're waiting for to happen in California. Again,
it'll happen.
That's not an if, it's when. If California, the big one hits and the San Andreas Fault breaks, which will probably happen when this volcano erupts, that California shelf will drop by 10 feet. Okay, so you're talking about most of the west coast of California, we're talking at least 500, 600 miles, dropping by 10 feet. The tidal wave that would cause would just be...
It's unspeakable.
It would be just insane, because not only will it wipe out everything on the coast of California, but it has other effects to other countries, such as countries all over the Pacific Rim.
Sure, all South America, Mexico, all kinds of places.
Asia,
Well, yeah, if it goes
these
back.
waves are not just going to stand by.
Right.
So, yeah, you're fine if you're sitting on the mountain on the big island and you're at 14,000 feet. But you're not going to do so well if you're in one of these other places like Maui and Waikiki Beach.
Right.
Or in shores of Alaska and so on. I mean, it's going to affect the entire Pacific Ocean. So these things have been forecasted to happen. And they are going to happen. There are methodologies that in the long run, and it's called cost-benefit analysis. What's the cost of something like that happening? You're like, I don't know, maybe $4 or $5 trillion easy.
Oh, yeah.
If not more.
If not more.
And then the lives. I mean, do you realize how many people would die if something like that happened? Even if Yellowstone goes off. You immediately, like I said, you're talking about everything within 150-mile radius would be annihilated. Literally like nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
So, right there, from the cities that I can count, that's at least 850,000 to 1.2 million people. Just like that. Stuff that has existed.
Gone.
This is what's happened in Yellowstone. And this is where you have to worry about it.
And how recent is this? You were saying something like, it's...
2 days ago.
2 days ago, okay. This is August
Steam
27th.
Valley stopped, which means the water has dried up. There's no more geysers and steam and stuff. There's only a few geysers and the geysers that are going, they're not clear anymore. They're gray. So something's going on. And the United States Geological Survey said that was one of the things to look for, because that would mean that there's a shift in the magma and there's a shift in the water tables. Like I said, they better do something, because if they don't do something, it's not a matter of if. And we're due. The last time it went off was 640 to 650,000 years ago. These are estimations, people.
Mm-hmm.
So they've detected these calderas like a little footprint, walking on the mantle. So they have a pretty good indication of exactly when these things are going to happen. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
So, it's just like your tax bill. You can't put it off. It's just going to get worse. So they have to deal with it.
It took a while for them to get a bit serious about asteroids and trying to protect us with that. So, I guess it just takes time for people to realize until something happens. We saw the thing that happened over Russia. All of a sudden, people start to think, wait a minute, this is really going to happen. We got to figure out a way to protect ourselves. So what do we have to... Mount Etna's got to blow up or something for us to remember what it's like?
And that's the reason why we need... And this is where the sin of all of our leaders, all of our leaders, since really the last 4 presidents, easy, they should have put at least a 25 to 30% emphasis on the human space program. Because just like Kennedy said, necessity is the mother of invention. You know, everything you have in this room is due to that 9-year revolution of getting to the moon. And the primer was that you needed 10,000 pounds of fuel for every pound that you had to take to the moon. And you still needed an IBM 360 essentially computer, which was like the size of your house, a 3,500 square foot house. They had to get it down to a briefcase. They had to invent alloys that went from minus 750 degrees Fahrenheit to plus 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit in less than a millisecond. They had to invent pumps that would pump liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen 1 million gallons a minute. They had to invent composites,
right.
your polycarbonate CDs, and the flash process of putting the metal on them. That was all invented for the visors for the astronauts. The biomedical inventions, the spin-offs. And if you listen to the Moon speech, he knew this. He knew this. And this is why we needed to have that program. Not because of the rock and because of the stuff, but because getting off this planet would make us become efficient. You have to recycle everything. You have to come up with a very independent and reliable energy source. You have to come up with a computer system that would not be affected by CMEs and EMPs and whatnot. You have to be able to grow your own food. And all these technologies that you would have to invent would be applicable here directly on the planet. So the proper proving ground for this would be the moon, because it's in essentially a vacuum. It's exposed to the cosmic rays and whatnot. And then you'd be able to set up a Mars colony and mine asteroids and then mine moons of Jupiter and other types of places. You'd be able to go out. We should already be there.
I know.
We should already be there. This conversation we're having right now would be immaterial because we'd be tapping into that. We'd be able to control volcanism and earthquakes and tsunamis and whatnot. I mean, essentially, there'd be no wars because people would be like, well, why war? Let's go out and get another asteroid or whatever. I mean, do you realize there's asteroids out there that are 90 to 95% gold? There's an asteroid that's 90% iron. I mean, you could park with robots. You could go grab these things. You can park them in orbit and do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's no limit to what the human mind, as far as imagination, can figure out. And if we do work, like I said, if we work together, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish.
How likely is it that you think that this is going to happen? I mean, in our lifetime, to see this Yellowstone thing taken care of, realistically?
I think that people have to talk about it. I know that I'm going to, when the show comes out, I'm going to put it on my Facebook and share it and try to get the word out. This thing has been erupting on and off for decades. Just like if you've ever been out to LA and see the LA artificial river basin, they should have set up a volcano basin, essentially, channeling this thing to go right to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So that if it was a big eruption and it got crazy, here's the path. Have a nice day. All these other houses and everything wouldn't be affected.
So do they have actual technology to do this, or is this something that has to be dreamed up?
But no, they have technology to do it. But you see, penny wise and dollar foolish. Nobody wanted to spend the bucks. They wanted to build a geothermal plant in Hawaii, but they didn't want to. What they should have done was build that big diverter. Like, when they built Hoover Dam, they thought of everything. They really did.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. They thought of a spillway, so they didn't want water running over the top of the dam, and they thought of everything.
Right.
They really did. And they thought of a bypass thing and the type of generation, and they really did think everything. They didn't think of the tremendous abuse that the environmentalists would be doing, and Vegas would be pulling. That's what happens with these lunatics from the left when they start thinking about. And I'm like, well, putting Hoover Dam is going to be a problem to the environment that was there already. You have all that, animals and whatnot, but the benefits outweigh what's going to happen because the animals are going to get out of the way. So you have to think about that, and you have to think about the fact that it made essentially another area, agriculture, possible in California. You had basically another area which was Las Vegas possible in the middle of a desert.
Right.
So,
but that was done a long time ago. The mentality seems like it was a lot more constructive way back when.
Yeah, they built the Suez Canal. They built the Panama Canal. They built the Hoover Dam. I mean, they built the Empire State Building in almost a year. It's incredible the amount of stuff that was being done because they had a policy of let's do it. Let's work it out. I think that kind of policy can be maintained with safe environmental things. Because again, if Yellowstone does blow up, how's 50 feet of ash for the wildlife? It's not very good.
It's not good. It's not good for anything.
Yes, I mean, it's natural. I mean, inhaling glass is not,
exactly.
It's not, the earth is doing it, so it's natural. No, I don't buy that. Just like I don't buy some people saying that we've been polluting the moon and Mars if we set up colonies there and stuff. No, that's ridiculous. You set up colonies, you expand, you grow. As a species, this is what we have to do. There was obviously a civilization in the past there, and what's the difference? If we're there, what's the difference in that civilization? How do you know that civilization came from Mars? How do you know that our civilization came from Earth? There's no one to know. They know that in the Human Genome Project, there was essentially a splice done to our genes. Essentially all human beings are incestuous. We're all related to like 6 humans. And dogs are related to 6 dogs. So essentially something happened. They have found, in the last ice age, again, these scientists are all wrong. Stuff was, again, suppressed. They found mammoth bones in Mexico that were scrimshaw. There was artwork done on them, but in order for the artwork to be done on them, the bone had to be green, essentially, just killed. So how's that possible? When they said that human beings were only on this continent for 40,000 years.
They don't know what they're talking about. Clearly.
That's wrong, So, I mean, it's just like, well, it's global warming that's melting the South Antarctic ice sheet. Well, then they found a volcano on Antarctica making essentially a lake. And underneath the ice thing, and that's what's melting the ice, is this volcanism. And that's why I say with global, these people say, I see them all the time on my Facebook. I say, well, what melted the last ice age?
Right.
ExxonMobil? And what froze it? Somebody didn't pay the heating bill? I mean, it doesn't. Do you realize that the Earth has been frozen to the equator, like a big ice ball?
Right.
And the CO2 levels, when the Earth was a big ice ball, they know this from ice core drillings and stuff, was 15,000 times greater than it was today. And that all makes sense, really, when you think about it, because you've seen marble. That's carbon calcium. That's carbon sequestered. Oil, coal, and all these things are carbon that's locked up. And there's a lot more carbon that's locked up than there is in the atmosphere. The carbon concentration used to be way higher. Plants used to have a fantastic time of it when it was the so-called the continent of Pangea.
Right.
And it makes sense. The plants had to grow fast and grow leaves quick because look at the size of these dinosaurs.
That's true.
These dinosaurs, I mean, an elephant eats like 1.5 tons a day. So can you just imagine what a dinosaur would eat then? And there were millions of them. So it makes sense that the CO2 levels had to be higher.
Right.
Plants and CO2 had to grow faster to make up for the difference.
Right.
And so there's agendas that are going on. But the big thing right now, with all these problems, with Fukushima, Yellowstone,
right.
if we work together as a people and we stop the divide and conquer crap, and we actually say, look, what's the real enemy? The real enemy is if Yellowstone goes up, that's a real enemy, folks.
Yeah, it definitely
That's
is.
going to be a real problem for all of us, not only for the Americans here, for China, for Russia. You think that it won't affect China, which is dependent on our economy for almost 65%. Europe is dependent on our economy for like 60%. And like I said, we feed the world, and all of a sudden, no more. The United States is now a null set for the indeterminate future.
In the future, yeah.
Okay? So you think that these countries are not going to be affected? Ha!
Of course they will be.
So the reality is that we have to get the word out, because we need to do something. We need to do what Professor Kaku said. And, I'm not saying that the plan is perfect. I mean, the plan has to be discussed, obviously, with experts and whatnot. But it has to be implemented and done now. Just like you and I were talking about, we should do a show on the asteroid protection system.
Right.
And it all goes back to the holy grail of tech, too, because if you had superconductors, you'd have 100% efficient motors. Mm-hmm. You'd have Gauss guns, super Gauss guns, that would be able to annihilate anything coming at us. There'd be so much you could do even with this. You could channel that harnessed energy throughout the country because there'd be no loss. I mean, think about that. That's just incredible. And why wouldn't the Greens get on this? Because geothermal energy is essentially as green as you're going to get.
Yeah, it's clean. So I don't know what the problem is.
And the fact is that you can then preserve, just like they did with Niagara Falls, you could then preserve the park the way it is. You wouldn't have a problem with it. But definitely, if that volcano goes off, you're not preserving any park. It's not
true.
Essentially, the whole center of the country will be impassable for at least 2 to 3 years. You won't be able to fly it. You won't be able to drive it. You won't be able to do anything. I don't know about you, but that's bad. That's really bad. Do you have any other questions about this?
Well, I just think that what you're saying is very important, but I mean, they have to do tests in order to figure out what they want to do, how they're going to solve this problem. You're saying they have tubes and stuff. Don't they have to do tests to make sure this kind of thing works? Do they know for a fact?
No, they've used this technology in Hawaii. So it's in a... Okay. Now,
so they have some ideas.
Now, remember, they've used, before they built Hoover Dam, and Hoover Dam was built in they started construction in 1927. Okay, so there were other dams going back to thousands of years.
Right, so they had a lot
So
of
the concept of a dam... a beaver's building dams, for Christmas sakes. Here's a beaver, blocks up a brook, makes a pond. So they knew that if they blocked up the Colorado River, they could stop floods, and they could create this Lake Mead reservoir, and they could use it for power, and they could then take the water on and off as they needed it and stuff like that. It was a very bold, extremely, it was dug with steam shovels and really incredible undertaking. A really incredible undertaking in the time that, again, we were in kind of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And they say that we would not have had the labor and because of the electricity that was created, and just think about the tapped horsepower that was created, released a tremendous amount of human potential in California, in Nevada, in those neighboring states. And they say that power and that water and everything really created and made California what it is today. And I say to you this, I say that Yellowstone could be the next Hoover Dam of the 21st century, to which that 1/3 of the continental of the United States would be filled and blooming with energy. 24/7 energy that you didn't worry about the weather, you didn't worry about sun, you didn't worry about anything, you didn't worry about oil. And just think how much oil that would free up for other industries that need oil. Just think how much that would free up for manufacturing of products that are extremely energy intensive, such as glass, steel. I mean, it would really create a whole economic boom, to be honest with you. To me, I would want to do this project because the untapped energy potential. And it's just sitting there. I mean, think about it. A Texas-sized magma field that's constantly being replenished.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, it's an inexhaustible supply of energy. I mean, it's a no-brainer. To me, that's as great as finding oil in Saudi Arabia. Instead of that, this is constantly replenished by the earth, so who knows when it will run out? It may never run out. There's evidence that it's been occurring there for 60 million years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time. And they do know that the Yellowstone caldera is connected to the California Basin caldera. That's another supervolcano. So there's possibilities that by tapping into this and relieving this pressure, essentially sipping at the straw and getting the stuff out of there, will reduce the possible eruption of other areas.
So what should we do? Should we write to our congressman? What should we do? We have obviously broadcast the show. How do we get this thing going?
Yeah,
is there anything doing
we have
right
to
now?
We have to write letters to our senators, to our congresspeople, to the
But we have to back it up with some data.
To
because,
the news. Well, the data is out there. The data is definitely out there.
And there's some websites about this.
They know about these eruptions because they found ash deposits in everywhere from Louisiana, and they're the same thing. They can do tests under the microscope to see if it's the same sand, same kind of dust. And they have. So they know that there's different eruptions that have created different ash clouds and different effects to the country. They've done this. So they have very good data of what it's done in the past. So it's not a matter of if. This is a matter of when. And what I'm saying to you is I would rather try to prevent that when, because that when would be very, very bad for the world. Not just for the United States, for the world.
Right.
It's
a global effect.
And,
absolutely.
I mean, nations have to be brought into this to where that, again, the superpowers have to be told, because this is going to affect their bottom line. Their people are going to die from famine too. The population of the earth cannot survive. The existing population, the 7.2 billion people that are there, are not going to survive, especially in the third world countries, if there's a winter that's going to last 2 to 3 years or greater.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's no more exports of bread and wheat and, beef and pork and whatnot from the heartland of our country. That's going to affect a tremendous amount of people who depend on us for food.
Absolutely. So I've been talking to Bob Ball, we're talking about Yellowstone and the possible eruption that could happen there, the big caldera. And again, there's a lot of websites that talk about this too if you want to get information, yes?
There's information from the United States Geological. There's all kinds of government records on this. And there are all kinds of cameras that are set up at Yellowstone to show what's been going on. They had to close the park, a good portion of the park, because it was essentially, almost a mile area that was affected from this 100-foot opening of the earth that was spewing volcanic material. And a lot of the media does not talk about it.
Didn't hear about it.
Nope. And this also has to stop, There's censorship on YouTube and everything else, and Facebook. It has to stop. That's wrong.
Yeah, no, agreed. So
that's wrong. So.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bob, for coming down, and maybe next time.
The opinionated me.
Well, it's good to have different opinions. It's the only way you can grow. You You got to listen to different sides, put things on the table.
I really believe that there is nothing. There is nothing. I mean, everybody has the right to think anything. Everybody has the right to do anything as long as they're not harming anybody. But together, with a focused leader and together, there's nothing we can't accomplish as a people for the benefit of everybody. Okay? And really, think about it. If we did cap Yellowstone, and we did cap Fukushima, and we did do all these other things, the benefits to humankind would be fantastic, both not only physically, but also, I think, mentally and spiritually, because wouldn't that be great, all of us seeing how we can do things working together?
Absolutely.
So thanks a lot, John, and thanks everybody serving out there.